Hello and welcome to a review of Veronica Mars. I'm Paul,
I'm Dave.
and this week we are discussing the episode There's Got to Be a Morning After Pill. This episode originally aired February 6th, 2007. Alrighty, so number one song in America, it's still Irreplaceable by Beyonce because, of course, it is.
Yeah.
Number one film in America, Dave. Any guesses? It is a new one. We're switching them out fast and furious right now.
Well, that's nice to see. And though I would like to say one particular one because it's mildly incredible for what it is, I'm not sure if it's the specific one I'm thinking of. But with the movie from last week, probably not staying. Um, Something around that time.
I'll give you a hint.
Uh,
It's an alleged comedy.
oh. Uh, Like, I can't think of a specific title, but the one thing that comes to mind is either one of those particular very bad uh, comedy particular things, whether with African American actors and or supposed other things, but a particular series isn't coming to mind.
Okay, so, oh boy. It is a little film that I don't know if you'll remember. It's called Norbit. And it starred Eddie Murphy.
Taking a glance at the poster, I somewhat recognize it, but also a case of I've never seen these films.
Yeah, I think there was only one of them. It's terrible from what I've heard. And somehow this movie cost $60 million to make.
Oh dear. It makes me mildly sad, but also a little bit happy that the other particular movie didn't specifically get it, but also very happy that it exists. That a while, a little bit before Norman release, there was Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time.
I am not familiar with this film.
It's one of the best Cinderella films ever.
Okay, I don't think I've seen any of the Cinderella movies, except the first one.
Understandable. Because they tried to make a series out of it, and the second one was kind of the case of, yeah, they tried to build the story as best they can. It somewhat worked, but also a case of, And then, of course, the third one. And the third one is a story.
Okay. This was, for those of you who don't remember, the period of time where Eddie Murphy was doing a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Well,
Whether or
no.
not it was just the case of just with the one or two things that he managed to do fairly decently, everyone and their grandma was giving him contracts to be like, be in our thing to do something.
I should say he was doing a lot of live action crap. He was still doing some pretty good animated stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is around the time that he made The Haunted Mansion, Norbit, Meet Dave. Imagine that. Like, oh my god, he was making some crap.
Hmm.
Anyway, let us move on to video games. So there is a couple of pretty big releases leading up to this episode. So, February 5th, if you had a Nintendo DS, you could pick up Diddy Kong Racing DS.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so sad.
And that we never got a proper sequel to Diddy Kong Racing. I agree.
Indeed. And that the very last game was on the DS and just.
Yes, although it looks like the new Mario Kart is taking a lot of things from uh, Diddy Kong Racing in a way, because there's like the open world and stuff, and that was something that Diddy Kong did, like 18 years ago, but whatever. Or no, like 28 years ago.
Something like that.
But
I can see it. Though, as it sits with that, I think Mario Kart still has the one or two things to go before I can actually kind of say that it's copying or completely much like Diddy Kong Racing.
yes, like a
Nothing
proper
was
story
like Diddy
mode.
Kong Racing. Yes.
Anyway, moving on. Also on February 5th, if you were still on the GBA, you could pick up Final Fantasy VI Advance. Which is, I think, Final Fantasy
Yes.
3 here, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes,
So
okay.
it's the marvelous case that they finally transferred the proper numbers from Japan over to us, which most likely confused a lot of people. But nevertheless, amazing game for what it is. Though I can't remember the specifics of the additional things they added to this one. Most likely the obvious additional bosses and other sorts of things. But nevertheless, Final Fantasy VI is good.
Very good. Moving on, February 6th, there are a couple of releases here. So if you had a PSP, you could pick up Capcom Puzzle World, which is just a collection of puzzle games that Capcom had made. Which
Understandable.
I guess that was a thing. February 6th, if you had a Nintendo DS, you could pick up a little game called Lunar Nights.
Like even checking with the title box of it, I have no idea what this is.
The only reason I remember this one is because I think this is the... Oh, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the one before this. But I think this is the one that required you to, like, go out into, like, the sunlight in order to, like, charge your character's energy or something. But it might have been the one before this. I think it was the one before this.
Double
Curses.
checking with a bit of information I can see with this. I do know the series you're talking about, though, for the life of me, the title is ridiculously long and silly. I can't recall it, but this game also takes the same kind of mechanic with using solar energy for gameplay mechanics.
Yes, and it was a super cool idea that I kind of wish was still around, although I don't know how you would implement it with, like, a digital release or something.
Very true. Like, aside from the two obvious things that I'm thinking that these games already done to death, and then just the case of your character has a battery, and to do specific things, the battery needs to be charged with sunlight.
Yes, I love that mechanic because I think it's really clever, but I don't know how you do it on a modern console. Like, you could do it on Switch too if there was a way to, like, if it had, like, a solar panel or something on it.
Yeah, but then of course to really branch out, like, do you really want to add specific things like that to mobile phones?
No, you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it on a phone. You'd have to do it on, like, a dedicated handset, like a Switch 2 or something.
Yeah.
Or, like, whatever the new portable PlayStation or Xbox is going to be that they're allegedly making. Also on February 6th, if you had a Nintendo DS, you could pick up Micro Machines V4. Have you played any of the
Yes.
Micro Machine games?
No. Possibly, but then also the case of it would have just possibly meshed in with all the other typical racing games I've supposedly played with stuff like that.
Okay, the Micro Machine games were quite fun. And finally, on February 6th, if you had a PC, you could pick up The Sims Life Stories.
Yeah. Which I can somewhat understand, but also kind of the case whether or not that supposedly works with just the basic concept of how the Sims game sort of works, I question, but also maybe the case of they were either scraping the barrel and or haven't come up with Sims 3 yet.
And The Sims have had, like, a bunch of, like, story games. Like, they did The Sims Bustin' Out, which came out for consoles. And they did a few other ones like that, where they were, like, quote-unquote story games. The Sims Bustin' Out, I remember actually being pretty good if you got, like, the console version.
Okay. Because I remember always seeing it on the shelf, but just the case that, yep, never picked it up.
I think it also got a Game Boy Advance version, maybe. Or they had games on the Game Boy Advance that were actually pretty good. That were, like, quote-unquote Sims story games. Yes. Anyway, let us discuss the episode. Alrighty. So, Veronica has a dream that she woke up in the middle of the winter with Logan, but she is plagued with visions of Madison. When she wakes up, she goes to the Hearst Library, where Tim Foyle's girlfriend, Bonnie, asks her to investigate who slipped her RU-486, which caused a miscarriage. When Veronica presses Bonnie further, she reveals that Tim or Dick could be the father, although Tim has been very supportive. Veronica asks Logan point blank whether Logan had sex with Madison over the winter, leading to a major fight, which ends when Veronica says she'll never forgive him. Veronica speaks to Bonnie's roommate, Phyllis, who reiterates that Tim has been very supportive. Veronica successfully breaks into Tim's office to investigate before realizing she doesn't have the password. After Keith comforts Veronica after her breakup, she bugs Tim's office. In her spare time, Veronica trails Madison out of envy. After ascertaining Tim's password, Veronica finds out that Tim is also investigating the dean's suicide, and that he has been browsing a site named Neptune Women's Clinic. Veronica visits the ministry of Bonnie's father, Ted, as well as the clinic, although neither really help in the case. She questions Anthony, one of the witnesses to the dean's death. He heard the gunshot. Returning home, Veronica is greeted by Keith, who has received a letter with images of Veronica exiting the clinic. For revenge, they visit the publisher of the photos, but it doesn't go well. Nevertheless, she does see a picture of one of Dick's paramours, although she is not as intimate with him as Veronica thought. In the middle of the night, Mindy Odell calls Keith, telling him to hurry. It turns out that Steve has been trying to break in. While he is there, Keith finds out that Cyrus has been planning on sending the Odell son to a disciplinary school, and that Mindy was at the scene of Dean Odell's death. Veronica starts to suspect one of the church officials, and a bookmark shows her that Bonnie's roommate was behind the RU-486. Bonnie begins to lash out at Phyllis, but her father holds her back and says that she should not be quick to anger. Veronica had previously hired Weevil to destroy Madison's car, but right before it is about to be crushed, she calls it off. Although she does ask Weevil to put a can of tuna in the AC so that it will stink forever and ever.
Yeah, because there is forgiveness, but there's also a payback.
Yes. So, what did you think of this episode, Dave?
It was definitely interesting to see, sort of see consequences from the previous episode coming into this one of Veronica just like, yeah, just with all the stuff going on, can't really let it go. And then the blow up with their relationship with Logan just, again, I can't remember if I remember the line specifically, but she finally says before leaving that if she can't get the thought of that sort of stuff out of their head, that she can't really forgive him in any sort of way.
Yes.
Which...
Are you there, Mr. David?
Oh, yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't think that was just the rest of my thought.
Okay. So, one of the things I will say is that now that Veronica has broken up with Logan, she can date Piz, because Piz is a much better person and is not nearly as toxic as Logan. Piz is a reasonable human being. Yeah. And he isn't Logan.
Yeah. There is also the history with Logan, which is understandable. Whether or not he got to get better, it's questionable, but nevertheless. But it's also the marvelous case of it's one of those shows. And one of the particular crowds of people that absolutely adore these sorts of shows is the will they, won't they argument of the particular peoples that they love. So it's one of the glasses of poison that you gotta take with it.
Yes, but Piz is better. Piz is like a reasonable human being. Whereas Logan is, well, he's Logan. Anyway. Yes, so this girl has been dosed with RU-486, which is a drug that induces miscarriages, which, oh boy, that is not a good thing to do to someone. That's real fucked up.
Yeah. Because again, there's all the typical argument of abortions and other sorts of things like that. But the additional thing of the specific drug being to give you, without you knowing and whatnot, just adds the whole, violated that person's privacy and whatnot. And that just, it just pushes completely into the, you did something completely unforgivable.
Yes. Abortions are different because you have to consent. And when somebody just slips you a drink that
Yes,
causes a
very.
miscarriage, you didn't consent to that. That's the whole thing there. Anyway, this was a pretty good episode, I thought. And hopefully Veronica starts dating Piz because Piz is a better person than Logan.
And I think the additional thing, a little bit from the last episode, but also into this one, is Weevil being a little bit more involved in the story with the stuff from there. Though I question with that one particular comment if that's going to supposedly cause issues, but it fits within his character. And also the case of possibly maybe Veronica should not take the advice or actually work on changing a little bit from things to supposedly help because oh god, especially with the issue with that and the stuff that she's been dealing with, it's just ooh, the pressures.
Yes. I hope that we get more Mac soon because I really like that character and she hasn't been really involved this season that much.
True, the couple of episodes 2 or so weeks back, I think, from the last time that we saw her.
Yes, but she's been in a couple episodes, but she hasn't really had much to do. Anyway,
That's true.
next week we'll be discussing the episode Post Game Mortem. In this episode, Veronica tries to clear the coach's son Josh of charges of the coach's murder. Meanwhile, Logan, heartbroken from his breakup with Veronica last week, ends up babysitting the 11-year-old sister of one of his friend Dick's paramours, and they begin to emotionally connect with each other. In addition, Veronica and Keith find out that two of the main suspects' alibis for the murder of Dean Odell do not match.
More things to look into.
Yes. Do you have any idea who might have killed the dean? Do you have a top suspect so far?
No one that I specifically can place a face and or give a name to, since Keith already did a decent job discussing with the feminist group that supposedly egged the dean's office and looked into little bits from that. I think the one particular thing that's still sort of in my mind, but still sort of sitting as a red herring and or I really hope he doesn't do it because it doesn't seem like he had a reason to, is Weevil, just with his access, the specific stuff that he did and other little bits of details with that, but also the case of please don't do that to Weevil. He's been through enough.
Yeah, I don't think it's Weevil because Weevil seems to genuinely like he genuinely seemed to like the dean. They've definitely set up Lilith House to be like the most likely suspects, which I think kind of rules them out because it's too obvious. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure who the killer is yet, but we will find out. Alrighty, if there's nothing else, I've been Paul.
And I've been Dave.